What is good, everybody, man? Let me know if you can hear us loud and clear. But I got my guy, Chauncy Sanders, here with me, man, to
What's up,
talk
man?
everything Alabama A&M football, man. So, Chauncey,
That's right.
introduce yourself a minute. Let them know what you do and just about yourself a little bit, where they can find you on social
Okay,
media, man. Just plug what you do.
man. First of all, I appreciate you for giving me the platform, man. I've been a big fan of the show, and I've been tuning in, hearing the crazy calls. Like you said yesterday, you guys had off script. Wasn't sure, how to come on as a now as an insider, but when I saw off script come on, I'm like, that I would dial it back a little bit. But as you said, man, Chauncey Sanders, been a play-by-play and voice of Alabama A&M men's and women's basketball, as well as being a reporter for the university's student-led broadcast for our student-led station WJB TV as well. Being the sports director for that. Also, I've been hands-on with the football team as well, being a former media assistant as well, being a former filmer, being a former highlight coordinator as well.
Man, love to hear, man. I know you're doing big work, man. I've been following you on social media, what you're doing, man.
Appreciate
Big
that.
fan,
Yeah,
and keep grinding. And for let's get into the season real quick, man. Before we
right.
get into spring practice and while we're all here now, let's look back at the season. A 7-3 season, another win in the Magic
Another
City
one.
Classic, which was expected for you. What were your takeaways, and how would you grade the 2021 season for Alabama A&M?
Well, to our standards for the A&M team, I think their standards were pretty high ever since they won the SWAC championship, and it should have been when you have a quarterback, the quarterback at the rate that they have with Kyle Glass as well. And so I think them having the standards high, bringing in extra players, I think they kind of had a season such as I like to call back and think about the Chicago Bulls when Michael Jordan said in the documentary, in the Last Dance documentary, that when he came back to the team, there was a couple of guys that were celebrating as if they had won that three-peat team. And you had that with this A&M team where you had a lot of guys that were hungry, but at the same time, you had some guys that I felt just thought that the season would just come to them easily and just didn't know what the target they would have on their backs because they didn't win the championship with that team. So I would grade the season overall a B plus. I mean, yet another winning season, and that goes to the credit of head coach Connell Maynor, of course. Ever since he's walked in now, having winning seasons consecutively now, and that's no easy task here on the Hill for Alabama A&M, as we saw in previous history.
Yeah, I like that B grade. I think I'll go with like a straight
Yeah,
B. If for me, if the Jackson State game didn't turn out how it did, if it was a close
right.
game or just a
Yeah,
normal game, I think that B plus, even maybe an A minus, depending on where you want to look at it. That Grambling
exactly.
loss hurts a lot. I feel like
Really
if you
badly.
take if you take that Grambling loss out of that schedule and you're what, 8-2, and you have a
Right.
loss to FAMU close at home where you led the entire game, and then you play Jackson State closer than what they did this previous year. I feel like you could even argue an A minus year for what they accomplished. But man, for you, man, looking back, I was in Huntsville for that game. I was sitting
Uh,
in the family section right there behind the Kills family for that game. Looking back at that Jackson State game, the way DeAnderson put it to me is everything that could have gone wrong for Alabama A&M
did go wrong.
went wrong on that day. So when you
Did
look
go
back
wrong.
at that game, do you think Jackson State was what, 50 something points better than Alabama A&M last year?
I mean, no way in hell. I mean, when we look back at it, they didn't, and you go back and look at the stats, they didn't have a receiver in the 100-yard rank. I mean, they didn't have a 100-yard receiver. I think it truly came to the fact that who executed better down the stretch. And obviously, it was Jackson State. When you look at the score, they executed on every turnover we created and every miscue that happened on A&M's part. And they did a great job. I mean, our defense was stout, and it showed during the season, in the regular season, even in the SWAC championship, just all but one game in the Celebration Bowl. But he's absolutely right. It just came down to execution. It came down to a point where certain calls were maybe questionable, but when it came down to executing on the offensive side of the ball, it was absolutely horrendous. But that can't go without being said about the struggles from the defensive side of the ball. And I think going back to what our grade was, I think that's what actually kept me from giving them a higher grade. It should have gave them a lower grade with the defense. I mean, it just struggled from early on in the season when you looked at Tuskegee and you looked at Bethune-Cookman, those should have been blowout wins. I mean, they were far head and shoulders above, better than those teams, and it wound up being a one possession ball game down the stretch, and that can't happen going into next season. So it came to a boiling point when you came to Grambling State, and you saw the struggles with the young offensive line, and you saw the struggles with the defense not able to just buy you a stop at certain points during the stretches of games. And when you saw that loss to Grambling, it was a bit of a surprise and it was a bit of a letdown. But to many people that were closer to the organization, the program, it was a head scratcher. But it was also something that you knew was coming down the line, that one of these games is going to end up catching up with them. When you look early on, from even at the South Carolina State game, I mean, you look at the first game of the year, they were head above, way better than South Carolina, even though they end up going down and winning the Celebration Bowl. I had a chance to talk to head coach Buddy Pugh about that defense of A&M, and he mentioned about his defense as well, but he really was talking more about the defense of A&M, how they had to improve defensively, especially schematically. When you saw those 3rd and 15s and the 3rd and 12s, and they're unable to get off the field, it came to a head when you look at the Jackson State game. They just ran the ball down our throats, as well as executing passes when they need to execute passes, and that led to a big butt whooping at homecoming.
Man, and I agree with everything you said. I love how you broke it down. And it also boils down to, and I know Scotty said this and some of the other channels,
Yeah,
including myself, if Akil Glass didn't have a good game, Alabama A&M was in serious trouble.
trouble.
That offense was
Mhm.
so electric, man, from D. Anderson to even Quarles at running back. He had
Right.
such an underrated year and was kind of outshined by Akil down the stretch. But that Grambling game should have been a win. The collapse against
Easily.
FAMU should have been a win. I mean, you're up 14 points on a team in FAMU that doesn't score easily. Like that offense
14
wasn't the
plus.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And so for really and truly, man, it was for me, if I had to give it like a title, it's the year of what ifs for Alabama A&M.
Right.
What if the offensive
Yeah.
line steps up? What if the defense is just slightly better? And going
What
into
if
the
they change
season,
coordinators? I mean, they changed coordinators,
exactly.
I think, directly after that FAMU game, if not after the Jackson State game for sure. But I closed my camera at one point in that FAMU game, believing that they were going to win the game easily. I thought this was a slide, and I went upstairs to the media section and got something to eat, caught a quick break, put some highlights onto the camera because I was reporting, of course, and looking forward to a great interview with head coach Connell Manor on the bounce back. And then all bets are off if you're just losing to FAMU. If you beat FAMU and you lost to Jackson State, you never know what could have happened down the stretch. But you losing to FAMU after they came back like that and that collapse, the season was over after that. It was pretty much over because you knew they would beat everyone else down the line.
Yeah, and I think with that FAMU game, you were kind of looking at that game like the winner of that game, if they win out, has a playoff bid on the line. Alabama
Exactly.
A&M and FAMU were the only two teams in the SWAC that were going to get a playoff bid if they won out. But that loss, like you said, it kind of took the wind out of the sails. And then the last game that
Totally.
mattered really was the Magic City Classic against Alabama State, because that one's going to matter even if the teams are
Yeah.
winless.
Right.
But lots of holes, man. And a lot of people were saying the defense needed to be reloaded. They bring in, I believe, 17 just defensive backs and have
That's
the
right.
largest transfer class in the entire country. FBS, FCS, D2 level, it doesn't matter.
No
For
question.
you, how do you feel about this recruiting class, and who are some of the players that you're like, that's a guy that is going to be a baller down the line?
Well, they have a lot of defensive backs, and one of them I pinpointed out was Marquez Mason, of course, as well as Carlos Becker the third. And those guys have experience, and that's the thing that I think they were looking for more, is experience going into this defensive side of the football. Where guys, they couldn't afford to find younger group of guys and try to develop them with the short amount of time that they have going into the fall. So they looked more towards the transfer portal, and they did an amazing job. And I had to give a shout out to head coach, Coach Maynard as well, as coordinator and quarterbacks coach, and Jason Mai, as well as Dwayne Taylor and the rest of the crew that goes on, because they really brought it on, especially on that defensive side of the ball with Coach Boyer as well. And man, when you look at the guys that they have, the talented guys that they have, I got a chance to talk to them earlier, and they were really hyped about this defensive side of the football. They said they've been swarming around. And I got a chance to check them out earlier as well a couple weeks prior, and they are swarming around to the football. It's a tale of two different defenses when you look at this spring versus during the fall, especially on that defensive line. I think one of the struggles they had was not being able to get to the quarterback. When we go back and look at the film of the Jackson State game or the FAMU game, even the Alabama State game at Magic City Classic, one of the struggles they had was getting to the football. And I think that won't be such an issue this year come around, especially with the athleticism of that defensive line.
Man, I agree, and I do believe Troutman's back, right? Trinell
Yes,
Troutman in the
yes.
secondary.
Troutman is back. He came back in the middle of February, I believe.
Mhm.
And it kind of was a head scratcher. I think one of the early parts of recruiting, why we see so many defensive backs, is because a lot of them are very versatile as well, being able to play the safety position. But when you looked earlier into this recruiting class, you saw a lot of guys being recruited, especially in the defensive backs. And it was because of Troutman almost not being able to be back. At one point, it seemed that the team was trying to strategize around finding a talent such as him, a versatile defender such as him as well, being able to play multiple positions. But they were able to bring him back, and now it's going to be a great sight for them because he obviously was spectacular last year, one of their better defensive players last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, the edge position was really lacking last year for them. They
Right,
didn't have when you look at the top teams, FAMU, they had Isaiah Land,
right,
Jackson State, James Houston. I think even when you look around the league, Grambling has some guys that could get after the quarterback. Southern, of course,
right,
Jordan Lewis, who they bring back. But for Alabama A&M, it was really Holloway or bust, and Holloway played more of a linebacker role than a
right.
true edge role. So they didn't have that
Because
guy
they
that was
lost
like, we need
Kelly.
a
They
play.
lost Kelly early
Yep.
on. Yeah. And now that was a
And
huge struggle for them.
looking at the class, man, there was one guy who I really that two guys that really stuck out to me. One is Zarian Hayes from Appalachian State, the
Hmm.
three-star defensive end for him. This is a guy who I have a connection up in Appalachian State who they thought this guy was the future of their team. Of course, his freshman year, he was behind Demetrius Taylor, who's a three-time first team All Sun Belt All American. We had him on the show. The kid's going to the NFL. There's a reason why he was one of the best players in the Sun Belt. But then he
For
had an
sure.
injury when it was his time to step up. He had a leg injury, kept him out all season. But this is a guy who was a first team All State guy at running back and quarterback and led the state in rushing yards, led a team to a 15-0 state title record. I think his athleticism is going to be huge moving forward for Alabama A&M. And
Definitely.
also Day Coleman, three-star linebacker out of Stephen F. Austin, formerly also Arizona. I
Right.
really like this kid in Texas, was a first team all region selection, MVP of his team, and was a top 100 player in the state of Texas, man. And he was a big contributing factor to this Stephen F. Austin team that made a playoff run this year. And that Stephen F. Austin team was loaded last year. And so I
And they
really
were
think,
really rail led as well. And I
yep,
hope he brings some of that leadership on to this defense side of the ball because the coaches have been just speaking volumes when it comes to the leadership of these transfers as well, being able to come in and bring some of that mentality that they had, whether it came from Stephen F. Austin as well as Appalachian State.
yeah, I mean, great programs with great coaches. And
Oh, yeah.
also, I talked to a source who played with the defensive tackle Daryl Middleton at Tennessee, and
Mhm.
they said he's a grown man. They said
Oh, yeah.
that guy, if he's focused and he's ready, he's going to cause a lot of problems. And I think you could see that with being what 6'7", 350
He
pounds.
takes up a lot of space. I've seen a couple of those guys on the defensive line in person, up close. Whether it's been through walking through hallways, cafeterias as well, having time to chat, and man, they just take up a lot of space. And I think that's what head coach Connell Manor was looking for the most, for guys that could take up space and be athletic as well. I think that they were lacking, like we said, they were lacking getting to the football this year, and I think they truly were looking for grown men when it came down to that position for sure.
Hey, we'll find out. We'll see how it works, man. Like I said,
Definitely.
the largest transfer class in college football, but a lot was made on SWAC scheduling. Let's just be honest, whether it's from Jackson State down all the way to Bethune-Cookman and Valley, it doesn't matter. Everyone was getting smoked when it was
Right.
coming to SWAC scheduling. But there's one team, if you're looking at a gauntlet to open the season, for me, it's Alabama A&M, man. So, what were your
Yeah.
first thoughts on the schedule, and for you, how do you like? Do you like how they broke it down? Do you like how they
Um,
lined it up, or do you feel like Alabama A&M has the toughest schedule in the SWAC?
I believe they're in the top 25th percentile if we talk about who has the strongest schedule here. When you look at who they open with, and then even after who they open with, you look at who they open the SWAC with going to FAMU. That's no easy environment. It's definitely not easy environment. Now with the renovations and the fan base that they have down there in Tallahassee. And then you go down the line and you see so many of the other teams lined up waiting for them. It's going to be a gauntlet for sure. It's going to be a test to see which quarterback is going to be ready coming out of this spring and fall camp, which receivers are going to step up outside of Ibrahim as well as Jenkins as well. When you look at the guys they have at the receiving court, it's going to be a question mark as well. Can they step up? They lost a lot of veterans in D. Anderson, losing Zabrion Moore. And then you also lost Odul Hilaire to Bowling Green State University. So to see how that offense clicks post a glass is going to be something to see as well with the Outlaws. And then how this defense reacts. I mean, they have plenty of depth now. And that's one thing head coach Connell Maynard told myself in the broadcast as well for the A&M Athletics YouTube live stream was the depth. We need guys that can be able to step up when an injury occurs. And he didn't feel like he had enough depth, especially on the defensive side of the ball last season. So it's going to be something to look at. It's going to be something special to see coming down that stretch, especially towards Jackson State time, now being on a neutral field, mano a mano out there in Mobile. It's going to be special to see as well.
Man, yeah, I'm excited for that one. I
Oh,
live in
yeah.
Mobile and from Mobile, so I'm all for that one. But a lot was made on neutral site games, so I want to get your
Yeah.
thoughts. As we've heard the Jackson State argument about Mobile. Some Jackson State fans love it. Some would rather see that game played in Jackson. For you, do you feel like taking that game and putting it in an environment like Mobile is good or bad for that game and these two programs?
Well, when it comes to that classic, it's great. I mean, money is money when it comes down to it. When it boils down to it, you wouldn't want a better game in the SWAC than Jackson State, Alabama A&M. I mean, who has a better rivalry right now in the past 3 seasons than these two teams? So it's going to be something great to see down in Mobile. It'll be very special. But coming from a fan perspective, you love those home and home games. It's kind of like seeing the Alabama team take on Ohio State team on a neutral field. You want to see those environments. And A&M had the opportunity at homecoming last season to have their environment, and it was very rowdy. I mean, you had Ric Flair come out for coin toss. You had both bands there blowing away, and then what's better than homecoming? So I totally get it from a Jackson State perspective that they want to have the game at their home field and their, record-setting crowd and the sonic boom and the Pepsi and the Aflac trailer rolling around there for Coach Prime, and that's going to be pretty special to see, and it'll be a huge buildup. So I totally understand it and I get it, but when it boils down to it, the SWAC is not going to turn their heads at any money. Yeah,
Man, and on that schedule, I think it's the toughest 4-game stretch in the SWAC. To start out with
yeah,
UAB and Troy on the road, get
exactly.
Austin P, who is going to be one of the top teams in the OVC potentially, and then, like you said, have to go to Tallahassee and Bragg and play FAMU. When you're looking at the schedule, what does Alabama A&M have to get out of that 4-game stretch? Do you need to see 2-2? Are you hoping 3 and like where are you
Well,
looking
you're hoping
at
three
those
and
4
one.
games?
You're hoping
Okay.
3-1. Experience is definitely going to be built there, and a lot of thick skin is going to be built there between those first 3 to 4 teams. When you boil it down to that, I think they really do have a special chance against UAB. UAB is no easy feat, especially being on the road. However, it's not going to be that far being in Birmingham, but it's going to be a tall tale sign to see where they match up, a great measuring stick of where they match up, not just in our conference in the SWAC, but where they match up in general. I mean, are they looking for a playoff bid? Or are they looking for experience for the Celebration Bowl? I think that this is not going to be just a money grab here for A&M when you see those teams being played. It's actual competition, and it's something that Dr. Charles McClellan has been looking for the past 2 to 3 seasons since he's been trying to transform this conference early on. And he spoke about that prior to the COVID year. He was looking to say, hey, guys, we're not trying to play any of these lower level teams. No disrespect to Miles College, but they're not looking to play Miles College anymore in this division. They're not looking to play Edward Waters. You saw that between Jackson State. They're looking to actually play great competition teams that they could actually match up with and feel that they're closer to in other conferences, whether it's the Ohio Valley or whether it's the CUSA. They looking to match up with those teams and see where they are as a program and as a conference as well, because you see a lot of talk is made between these HBCU programs, and we saw it on display here during March Madness when you saw the Jackson State ladies literally make Kim Mulkey's hair dry up on her shoulders, how nervous she had her going into that fourth quarter, being up 6 points with 3 minutes left. You didn't really get a chance to see it with Howard, but Howard's not in this conference as well. But you saw Texas Southern fighting hard in the March Madness. That's where they want to be when these programs match up with these higher level Division One teams as well. So I think that it'll be a good sign for them. I hope that they can go 3-1, but it's going to be tough to see early on. It's going to be something special to watch and keep an eye out on where they are, especially going into that game against FAMU. So I'm guessing maybe 2-2 would be ideal. Maybe 3-1 is definitely a great sign for this team if they're really rolling, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think 2-2 is probably, if you're looking for a FCS playoff bid, 2-2 is the bare minimum. Like, and
Right.
you're still putting yourself on the bubble and probably have to win out depending on what games you lose, man. But 3-1, I think would be amazing. And of course, UAB uh, is that program has been revitalized, winning conference championships, and
180. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they beat Jacksonville State by like 30 or 40 last year in week 1. And then Troy, of course, I believe beat Southern 55-6 last year. And so those are going to be two tough games. And of course, Austin P is what it is. We'll see how it
Right.
is. They got to come to Huntsville, which isn't an easy place to play either. But that Bragg
Right.
game, man, you're talking about a game that's going to determine if it's Celebration Bowl or FCS playoff goal. That game in Bragg's going to do it real quickly, man. But
Definitely.
looking at spring practice, man, I've seen some clips, I've seen some players starting to post some pictures.
Yeah.
What are your biggest questions for this team entering spring practice?
Well, I think I touched on a few, and then one of them was the defensive line and defense side of the ball in general. I got a chance to check them out, and they are swarming to the football. They are getting after it, and that was a great sign. But I think most likely it's going to be, now that Trotman is back, I think the eyes now get pointed towards the line, the front seven. We see a lot of defensive backs. It's going to be a great battle between those guys, and may the best win, man. I know head coach Connell Maynor is definitely not going to hold back any favoritism when it comes to that position. I think another thing a lot of people need to be keeping an eye on is the quarterback race. I mean, that's obviously one of the bigger question marks on this football team right now. Is it going to be between Williams, or is it going to be between um, Quincy Casey? And you also look at this Outlaw team, like I mentioned before, they lost 3 key receivers, 3 veteran receivers as well. I know they were anticipating losing more in Anderson, them being seniors, but losing Allaire was definitely something that was a gut wrenching punch, because they saw him as a son. They saw him as a guy like Abdul that was head down, and I did as well, seeing him as a head down worker first. Those guys really put the work in, coming from being pretty much walk-ons to now being 1,000-yard consecutive receivers. That's no easy feat, trying to lose them. And when you lose guys like Moore, Allaire, as well as Anderson, that's 20-plus touchdowns, nearly 2,000 yards receiving. So that's going to be a huge question mark. Who's going to step up? They bring in a few transfers on that receiving core, but it's going to be interesting to see who steps up in that receiving core to fill in that third spot that they had, the third and fourth spot, if that matter up, because the tight ends are well equipped, them having Kendrick as well as Howard being back now. But when you have the rest of that receiving core in the Outlaws, it's going to be interesting to see who steps up coming out of spring ball as well.
Yeah, for me, I feel like the QB battle for Alabama A&M. Everyone's like, we got to know, because especially when you're replacing a legend like Akil. I mean, Akil Glass is
Exactly.
going to go down as one of the best quarterbacks in SWAC history for a career. So that's
Definitely.
always
No
tough to
questions
replace.
asked. Yeah.
And then you've got a guy who was a 4-star from Miami, and I believe it was at Florida
And
International.
Williams. Yeah.
Yeah, Jaron
Yeah,
Williams,
Jerome
and
Williams.
then you also have Quincy Casey from your
Right.
division rival, and so the storylines are there. But for me, I'm really looking at the O line. The O-line has to be better. And they had some young guys that got better toward the end of the year. But when you look at that Jackson State game, James Houston had a field day. Niles Gaddy had a field
Ridiculous.
day. I mean, everybody got to eat. And you saw the Grambling game, Isaiah Land, Savion, all those guys that were at that next level ate against your offensive line. I need some better
Destroyed
communication
them.
because
Yeah.
for Akil to win SWAC Offensive Player of the Year playing behind the O-line he did last year was a feat that I never thought I'd see. I mean, if he had an offensive line, he's throwing for 4,000 yards
Easily.
minimum,
Easily.
minimum.
I
And
mean, very
so
easily.
I need the offensive line to gel. You got some returning guys, you got some transfers, you got some recruits. I
Right.
need you to get 5 guys who can block. And then the other one, which I don't think a lot of people are talking about, I need the corner spot to come along. And the safeties look good with Troutman and some of the guys they got coming in, but pure corners have to be improved. And what happened last year for me, man, and I don't, and you can correct me if you didn't see it this way. I felt like the lack of ability of their outside corners or boundary corners really hurt them on what type of coverages and disguises and scheme fits that they could run because they didn't trust their corners on islands. So they
Exactly.
had to run the same zones over and over again. They had to run the same different schemes because they didn't trust their guys to be there or make plays. And so I need a playmaker at corner, especially when you look at the wide receivers that are at FAMU. The 6'5" gang that Grambling has assembled over there. Texas Southern loaded with Andrew Body. You look at Jackson State with Malachi Wadman, possibly Travis Hunter, Kevin Coleman.
Right.
The list
Possibly
goes on and
Travis
on.
Hunter. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have to find some corners that can guard, and you have to find some corners that can play on islands. You're not going to be able to run a basic zone all season long. You're going to have to show some versatility and some coverage disguises because Shador and some of these quarterbacks are too good, and they're going to pick you
Way too
apart if
good.
you don't have that versatility.
Definitely. And you hit the nail right on the head there with those outside defensive backs. They're going to have to be able to recover easily. And I think they looked more at the physicality of their outside corners. I think that they felt that some of those guys were a little bit undersized. And so I think they prioritized more than ever this season, actually getting some bigger, more physical defensive backs so they could have a little bit of depth there and be able to bounce in and out. They wanted to be able to switch those guys a little bit more easily. I think a lot of the pressure came on them more than ever last season because it was a full season for one. I don't think those guys had enough experience. A lot of games were being canceled and what have you in the COVID year in that spring. And when you looked at the guys they lost Mike Mills as well as
Mhm.
in Portlock, Adrian Portlock. Those guys really held the fort down at the defensive back position. When you looked at that Coach Eastman led defensive team there for the Bulldogs. So them losing him and a lack of experience for those defensive backs kind of hurt you going into this season. I don't think we'll see that this season going forward because of the schemes that they have in place for these defensive backs this season. I think we'll have a lot better outlook on them coming towards the end of the season, hopefully.
Man, I agree. And then also just defensive communication for me, man. I
Yeah,
mean, the pinnacle of it is I was sitting in the stands. Jackson State's in the red zone, and they bring Josh Lanier in motion. Nobody on the defense moves, and they're playing man coverage. And all he does is Keith Corbin runs a slant, and then there's nobody covering Josh Lanier in the flats. Like if you're playing man, I need a linebacker to move. I need a safety to come down. Like somebody has to go with them across the formation,
it's
and
somebody.
everyone just watched them run right into the end zone. And that is going to be 7 every single time. I don't care if you're playing a high school team. If you just leave a guy open in the
Exactly.
in open field, he's going to score. So I just want to see better defensive execution and communication. And like you said, staff changes, everything like that could bring that along. But I think we kind of talked about positional battles, man. So we'll ask it like this.
Mhm.
Who is your favorite to win the QB battle right now for Alabama A&M?
Ooh, now see, I can't give that away just yet. Um, but I definitely see the battle between Williams and Casey not being just a two-man race, believe it or
Ooh.
not. I think it's going to be really spicy. I think that it's not done yet in the spring. I think it'll be pouring over into the fall as well prior to the season. It's going to come down to who can command this offense better, who can lead this offense down a drive when we need to drive, such as a Grambling State game. Who can we lean on to bring us out of this one? And I think right now they really love Quincy Casey. I think Casey has really improved the moment he walked into this building. And I think he gained a lot of the respect from a lot of his teammates as well the past 2 seasons he's been here for the Bulldogs, him working hard, him working in the weight room, and being a leader in the weight room. And that's some signs that you want to see out of your starting quarterback. Following losing a guy like Glass, who obviously is one of the most highly touted cornerbacks of any HBCU program in the past, decade, maybe so. When you look at it that way, maybe Travaris Jackson, or maybe even then you could go back to Steve McNair, is who I usually like to compare him with, not for his feet, but for the arm and the accuracy of Aquil Glass to be able to throw receivers open, to be able to have the vision that he had. It's going to be interesting to see in that quarterback battle who can not just, we don't want them to mirror. We know they're not going to be able to mirror exactly what Glass done, but they want someone that's going to be able to command the room the way he did and command the offense the way he did and lead drives in situations that they know they need a touchdown or a first down or a good drive out of them.
Yeah, I mean, and also for me, like I know they can both move in terms of Quincy
Right.
Casey and Williams, but I also feel like they move in different ways. Casey is quicker and can kind of be a little bit more explosive, but man, Williams will just run through somebody if he
Right.
needs to. He has a bit more muscle and size on him, and also he just has that like he doesn't excel very fast, but once he hits top speed, he can
He
get
can really
going.
let it
And
loose. Yeah.
yeah, and they both have big arms, but I really want to see who fits the scheme better. What does Jason Ma want? What does Dwayne Taylor want in his quarterback? And so for me, I feel like they both have a weird advantage. So when you're looking at Williams, he has so much experience. He's done this. He's been in situations, he's been in big games. Can he bring that to the table and that be a deciding factor? While you mentioned Casey, been in the program, has a leg up on the playbook, knows the coaches, knows the players, has become a leader in the program. So what's going to weigh more?
Right.
I guess
Exactly.
would be my question. But I know people are asking me. I don't know if you could say his name. Who's the third guy that you're really looking forward in the QB race?
I'm not going to tell you. I just going to let him Bruce in. I think
Saturday.
we've seen him. I'm just going to say we've seen his face before. That's the best I'll be able to tell you. We've seen his face before, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can be able to really make some noise in this quarterback race.
Oh man, the comments about to go wild. But listen, guys, tune in Saturday morning, and
11
I think
o'clock.
all your questions will be answered. But man, speaking of that spring game, before we get to breakout players, what are you, I guess, for looking at that game? What are you going to be paying attention to the most, and what do you want to see accomplished this Saturday for the spring game?
Execution, of course. I really want to see if these guys the quarterbacks can really get out here. We know we will see some big plays here and there, but we want to see who can execute when a play is called down the stretch in this one. And I want to look at the depth of this receiving core. I've mentioned it so many numerous times here on this podcast so far, is that there's a really big responsibility now on this offense to really see where their receiving core is right now in the spring. Do they need an extra guy to come in? Do they need to look outside, or do they have it inside? I think I'm going to be looking forward to seeing what Brian Juice Jenkins does now. This is going on to multiple year now. You're a vet now. It's going to be interesting to see where his fit is on this team now. It's going to be interesting to see these defensive backs. Like we said, so many defensive backs. They got a multitude of them now. So many right now that they're looking to see where they can fit them in other positions as well. So it's going to be interesting to see from those guys, as well as the quarterback race. And then also, we mentioned who's going to step up as that receiving core has lost some really key guys as well. Even the offensive line, I'll be looking forward to that as well. You mentioned it earlier. How can those guys match up? They also bring in a couple transfers as well on that offensive line to help them out. It's going to be interesting to see how those guys mesh in with this offense as well as this defensive line. Can they really get out and get after it like they have been in the practices so far, in an early close scrimmage that they had earlier on in this spring ball season? it's going to be interesting to see so far in this upcoming Saturday.
And I know you probably get the inside guy on this. Is the spring game going to be streamed? Where can people catch highlights or watch it?
We're actually working on that. They're working on
Okay.
that right now, but there will definitely be highlights being showcased for sure. There also is going to be a car show. One thing that Coach Maynard was definitely proud of and happy of was to see that there's going to be a car show and something that will also be enjoyable entertainment for the fans that show up, of course. No, it's the early spring ball practice. I'm not a big fan of that myself personally, being at 11 o'clock. But, hey, it is what it is. It's going to be a good one for sure. And the weather should be great as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing that car show.
Man, I like it. And so for the breakout players, man, just you can give me one or two offensive, one or two defensive, man. Who are you looking for to be those breakout players for A&M?
I'm looking forward to the guys that transferred in most. I'm looking forward to seeing in Denton, as well as Zarion Hayes, the guy that we mentioned earlier, transferred out of Appalachian State. I'm looking more into those guys from the defensive backs. Who's going to break out in that group? There's going to be someone that has to rise up out of that group, of course, looking at Benson as well as Burns. Those guys had a lot of experience under their belts on the defensive side of the ball, as well as who's going to be the number two to Gary Quarles as well. They've had a couple of guys moving in and out during the transfer portal and what have you, but you're going to be looking to have Quarles get some a lot of more reps than he did last season as well. So I'll be looking forward to seeing whoever comes out of that second spot there for the running back group. Is he going to be a potential breakout? Is he not? We've seen it earlier in this running back group when you had Bentley as your leading man, and then Quarles just totally took the room by a storm that same spring that they lost Bentley, and the rest is history now. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out as that second man, and also who's going to be number three right there, or number two for that matter, of in a receiving core. Who's going to be the next breakout receiver coming in to this season as well.
Man, I think Becker would be my pick on defense, the kid from Florida State. I mean, he just has it all, man. He looks like he's kind of like James Houston, where he has everything, like the physical talent's there. He just hasn't been able to put it
And the
together.
speed. And the
And,
speed
and
as
yeah,
well. I like
and
to
the speed.
mention that
I,
too.
I believe
Yeah.
I believe he was clocked at a 4.3, like 4.34, if I'm not mistaken, in high school, is what I read somewhere.
I want to say it might have been 4.34, but I thought it was
Yeah.
around the 4.5, 4.6. But
Maybe I'm
hey,
thinking
no,
about the wrong guy. I know
maybe
there's a
no,
kid
okay.
on Alabama A&M who ran a 4.34
I
at was
think
clocked
it may
somewhere.
have been
So
him though, because he's a speedster. I mean, he really can get
yeah,
after the football either way you want him to, and that's something that's going to be special to see, like you mentioned.
and I don't know if he counts as a breakout player because I felt like he didn't get enough respect last year. I feel like Gary Quarles is going to have a ridiculous year this year, especially now that I don't think the offense is going to run as much to the quarterback as it did with Akil, because Akil
Exactly.
was there for so long that if you need if listen, if I'm going to lose to Grambling, I would rather it be on the arm of Akil Glass
And
rather
it
than
was.
it
Yeah.
fall on somebody else and be like, man, we had a Walter Payton Award finalist, and like he was right there. So I get it. It ran through Akil Glass as it had to. But Gary Quarles put on a ridiculous year. I believe he was the leading rusher in the SWAC. And this year, I do think he's going to get a lot of carries. And he really fits that mold of in today's football, your running back has to be a glorified wide receiver, unless you're Derrick Henry and there's only
Exactly.
one Derrick Henry in the world.
Or maybe
You
Nick
have
Chubb at that matter of,
is
yeah.
yeah. And even then, Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor and those type of guys can still go out there and make plays in open space. But he
Yeah.
really fits that versatile piece that you can fit in like a 5 wide set and put him in the slot. He can be the guy to run through the middle of the line. So he can be that every down back. So I really want to see if Quarles can follow up that amazing season and really be a consensus number one back in the SWAC. Because I thought last year a lot of people just forgot about Quarles. If you
Right.
ask
They were caught
people,
up between the running back from FAMU and the running back from Alabama State and Gray, I believe, correct? Yeah, it's been so
Yeah.
long, caught up in so many seasons here with basketball, softball, and baseball. But yeah, and Gray, he was an awesome running back for sure for Alabama State. And like you said, a lot of people just got caught up in between that. But I think the numbers of Glass totally just kept the shadow. Um, it kept him in the shadow there when it came to his numbers. When you looked at the amount of yards he had a phenomenal game against Alabama State, had a strong game even earlier on in the season as well with Bethune-Cookman, as well as South Carolina State. He was just on fire early on, and it just kind of went unnoticed a little bit down the stretch there in the season. But I definitely will be looking forward to seeing if he can break out for sure.
Man, I listen, I'm a huge Gary Quarles fan, just to let you know. I'm on that bandwagon for 2022. I think he has all the potential to be that guy. And then, finally here, man, before we move on to talking
Mhm.
about a few other topics, what are your expectations for Alabama A&M? So I guess give me your best case
Mm.
scenario in terms of record and your worst case.
I it's gonna be hard for me to believe that they're gonna have a losing season for one, based off of the leadership of head coach Connell Maynor and what he's done since he's been here. I mean, a complete 180 turn. We could go on and on about what happened from the head down prior to him being here, but ever since they have been here, it's been a complete 180 turn as a team for sure. You got, if the moment you park in the parking lot here at the field house, everyone's car is parked in the same level. It kind of makes you say, okay, their camaraderie is here, and I think that most likely they're going to have it's going to be hard to say 7-3, but worst case scenario, they're in a 6-4 season. That is a definitely a disappointment for sure. I think they'll be more in the 7-3, 8-2 range. Best case scenario, they go 8-2, maybe take a couple of losses early on in the season, and they run the table later on, and they make their way into the SWAC championship, and all bets are off then. I know they've been waiting to be in the SWAC championship again for a long time. They've heard the chatter about ever since they won in the spring about the spring season being a fluke and what have you with that. And they're looking forward to being up for the test, for the battle. I know a lot of those guys that were part of that championship team want to come out and prove that was no fluke. That was no fluke in the spring. And last year wasn't an exact image of who they really are as champions. And they'll be looking forward to coming into the SWAC championship, getting there to the SWAC championship, making noise, and hopefully getting a celebration bowl.
Man, listen, I think that's fair. I mean, for me, I think 7 wins would be probably about my expectation right
Yeah,
now. I think we've already talked. The first 4 games is going to dictate everything. I don't. When you
totally.
look at those first 4 games, when Alabama A&M gets on that plane to leave Tallahassee, everyone in the country is going to know what they have. I mean, to be honest, like we know that whatever they brought to the table those first 4 games is what we're going to get later on. And so, for
Yeah.
me, I think 7 wins would be respectable because you look at the schedule, Jackson State, FAMU, UAB, and Troy are going to be brutal games. Like
Oh, yeah.
those, you have to, for me, in those 4 games, you at least have to win. You cannot go 0-4 in those
You
four
can't go
games.
0-4. You absolutely positively can't go 0-4 in those games, because then there's a lot of unraveling that can happen. When you saw that 3-game losing streak early on in the year last season when they lost to Grambling and then Jackson and then the backbreaker against FAMU, you saw a little bit of unraveling early on there, especially in between Grambling and Jackson State for sure. And they switched. Eventually, they had to switch coordinators defensively on to help them out there, especially after the Magic City Classic. But they can't have an 0-4 start to this season. It's going to be extremely vital to see if they can if they can be able to pull a couple games out, even if they aren't predicted to win those games for sure.
Man, I completely agree with you there. And then, man, before we, get out of here, man, we've almost hit an hour. I mean, great show, by the way, man. I
Oh, for
mean, I don't
sure.
think we've hit an hour on these questions
Really?
yet, but man, let's talk a bit about NFL draft, man, and some of the
Oh,
prospects.
yeah.
D. Anderson had a huge legacy bowl, did a great job at the
Huge.
HBCU combine. Akil Glass, of course, dominated the NFLPA game, or I believe it was the NFLPA game, and
Right.
then the
I believe
HBCU
so.
Legacy Bowl. all practice, man. I got to talk to him down there, and after practice, man, I had to wait from the day I interviewed him because NFL
Oh
Network
yeah.
like scooped
Steve,
him like
Steve, and
immediately.
Cameron. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Steve Weish does an amazing job. I mean, he's the legend. You know, that's what he
oh yeah,
does when he pulls you for an interview. You have to wait. You know, I've
exactly.
definitely been in those shoes before, waiting for him to stop interviewing Quill or Coach Maynard for sure. But you just sit back in awe, and I'm very proud of those guys for sure, man.
And man, looking at their performances, where one, do you think they get drafted? Two, where would you draft them? And kind of break down what you think their NFL future is.
Well, I definitely would want to keep an eye out on those guys. If I was an actual scout myself, if I was a general manager myself, I definitely want to keep my eyes out more than ever right now on those two guys, especially in Anderson being easily he's a hybrid of your Kyle. He's almost a comes from that same tree as Kyle Pitts does, where you put those guys outside as tight ends and they can still make it happen as if they're a receiver. He may not have the speed as a Kyle Pitts, but he definitely has the hands and he has the big play ability such as Kyle Pitts to really get it done. It'd be a great pickup to get probably in most likely I would say day 2, day 3. I'll see both of those guys, maybe not Glass as much, but I definitely see Anderson being one of those sleeper guys that you may not have thought he would be actually drafted, but he definitely got drafted, and he can be a professional as well. You know, he had a lot of noise coming out when he transferred from LSU to Oklahoma State to then A&M, but he was a total professional when he got here at A&M, and he definitely proved that on the field as well. When you saw some of those games, he came out with a couple of hat tricks, especially later on into the season. You just see the ability and the route running from him, and you say, wow, man, this could be special, especially at a tight end position. I think the question will be, will he be able to seriously be able to block such as a tight end on that level? But when we segue over now to Glass, I believe that he's right there with the rest of that QB group in Willis, in the quarterback from Pittsburgh, in the quarterback from I'm missing one more from
Hal.
Ole Miss. That's
Oh
right.
yeah. Oh, Hal and Corral,
Can't forget
the other
Howell and
two.
Corral, right?
Yeah.
Because Corral just had his pro day. He's right there with that group when it comes to arm strength, when it comes to accuracy. I think it's going to be all about how much they truly scouted Glass, how they evaluate him compared to the other ones. And if they truly believe in him, I think he could really surprise some people in the second round later on. I think the Jackson game may have affected him a little bit. If not, Grambling game may have affected his stock a little bit there, having so many sacks secured there, and then the last drive, of course. But I definitely see him as a second round, if not later, but he's definitely a second round later mid draft type of pick that you could pick up, and such as a team like Miami or a team like Cleveland where they're looking for a number 3, but someone that they can groom such as him, or the Jets maybe where they could pick him up and he may not start immediately. You don't put the pressure on him, but you groom him to be a great NFL professional to where he could be a backup of the future and then take over if you're not careful. If you know, because he definitely has the arm strength, he has the leadership ability that a lot of NFL teams are going to look for. When we looked at a quarterback like Baker Mayfield, who has the talent, who was a Heisman winner, a lot of questions were, is he an adult? Is he mature enough? You saw the tapes and what have you when he came out of the draft. Quill has none of that. He actually has all the leadership capabilities that you're looking for, and he's one of the guys that NFL would say is a grown up when you're looking for one in a rookie. You know, he's had a lot of experience, and he's also there with age as well. He's not the youngest guy in the draft. You're not talking about getting a 21-year-old quarterback and you're trying to flip them on to being in the professional leadership of 53 men. You're looking at a guy in Glass who actually has the leadership qualities and abilities, and you could trust him when your phone is not ringing in the middle of 12 a.m. in the middle of the night and you're not getting any calls or messages or any notifications about quarterback, your starting quarterback or your backup quarterback or your quarterback of the future just doing nonsense in the middle of the night or saying something off the wall or criticizing anybody in the room, you know.
Man, for me, okay, so if you would have asked me in December, like when the season ended, I
Mhm.
would have said no way. I'm gonna
Really?
be honest. After the season, I was like, the mobility, that Grambling game and Jackson State game sticks
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it just
I
is
spoke to a lot
embedded
of
like
people on that.
embedded in your head. And for me, after watching what he did at the NFLPA game, after what he did at the Legacy Bowl, and kind of seeing how the scouts were talking about him, looking at how he was interacting with the other players, I really do think he can fall in the later rounds. And like you said, it's because when you have that backup QB that you're bring it in to develop or bring it in to be a backup. Just let's be honest, you're not a starter yet. You're going to back up a good quarterback, and we need you to be ready and need you not to cause any problems, not be in the headlines. That's a kill glass. Like you said, he's going to be a professional. And so I think he could fit that role. And then he has the size, he has the arm. Eventually, he might find his way to the field, kind of like a Ryan Fitzpatrick did, where
Exactly.
he, yeah, he came in and didn't start till he was like, I don't even know when Ryan Fitzpatrick's probably like 8 years in the league for he even actually got a starting gig. And I think what helps Akil is this FCS class is so deep, but on the other hand, the Power Five class is not.
It's not at
Uh,
all.
re- I mean, Willis, let me just say, baller. And I think he's been
For
showing
sure.
that recently. He's
Oh,
probably
yeah.
going top 10 now. Pickett had a big
Definitely.
season, but Howell has questions. Pickett has hand size questions.
Right.
Corral, um, damn near broke his leg literally just a few months ago in the Sugar Bowl.
Right.
So there's so many questions. And then on the FCS side, Eric Barrier, size questions, didn't get invited to anything, which is a travesty in its own.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know
was a
how
head that
that.
was a bit of a head scratcher for sure.
Yeah, he's top five quarterback of all time at the FCS level. Cole Kelly got questions surrounding him, but the kid can absolutely ball. And then EJ Perry at Brown has done a great job at the pro day, did a great job at the combine, and then even got called afterwards, picking up trash after the combine was over,
Right.
helping the
Yeah.
employees, all
That was
stand up
awesome.
guys that,
Yeah.
yeah, and all guys who are professionals. Cole Kelly had his spurts at Arkansas, but it really has seemed to take a leadership role. He's 25 now. He's not the same 18-year-old that got in trouble at Arkansas. All these guys are perfect if you're looking for a quarterback to bring into your system and just take a chance on. So I think a lot of these guys, fourth to seventh round, you can see them. And there's going to be a few that fall to the undrafted free agent, but all you need is a
Right.
shot. And we've seen it
Definitely.
over and over again. Get on a roster. Malcolm Butler, I mean, Travis Kelsey was a late. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, we can go through the
Even
whole list.
Tyreek
Shannon
Hill
Sharp,
today. Tyreek
yeah,
Hill, what round did he fall in? And then now he's making 72 million fully guaranteed. Anything can
yeah.
happen, like you said. And I think that if Aquil just finds himself to the right system, and I'm myself personally, I'm feeling like, unfortunately, I'm saying this being a Clevelander, that he falls to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they would be a perfect fit for him, given that the way they look for their quarterback, the architect they look for their quarterback. When you look at Dwayne Haskins and you look at Big Ben, and well, we're not going to look at Mason Rudolph, but Mason Rudolph, those guys, they aren't the most physically gifted quarterbacks when we talk about their mobility. They're not the greatest mobile quarterbacks, but they have the arm strength to get it to their receivers. And I think that he would fit great in that city. He would fit great on that quarterback room as well. And he would gain an amount of experience that I think that Tomlin eventually will be able to feel comfortable giving him a start as well, if he's able to grow into the quarterback that his potential says he could be.
Man, I completely agree. Also, I think the Falcons would be a cool one too.
Oh
Being
yeah,
in the South, being in a dome, you wouldn't have to worry about the weather and a
that's
kill
right.
with some of the weapons they have. Well, maybe not Calvin Ridley this year,
Right.
hopefully in the future, but Kyle
And he's
Pitts
had
is
experience
there.
with Ridley as well. Him working out with Ridley a couple seasons prior in the summer. So yeah, I could definitely see Atlanta as well.
And then, man, final question, man, before I let you get out of here. We just saw KJ Black get opportunity in the NFL as the OC for FAMU, and he gets to go to the Rams. Dwayne Taylor has been all over, the I guess the coaching circuit in terms of what he did at the NFLPA
Yeah,
game, and he's been a growing name. For you, if Alabama A&M has a big year, Quincy Casey or Williams, goes on to win SWAC Player of the Year, and Alabama and A&M continues their offensive tradition, do you think he's ready to move on and take possibly an NFL job or even be a head coach somewhere at the FCS or FBS level.
Absolutely, no questions asked there. Um, to be honest with you, this might be some breaking news here or what have you, but Coach Taylor actually had a couple of looks. He was actually in a couple conversations for a couple of head coaching spots this past season. And unfortunately, they're going to have to eat their words for not choosing him this season when those couple of schools that didn't choose him and what have you. I want to put their names out or out them, but I think that his resume speaks for itself. His talent development on this offensive side of the ball speaks for itself, as well as his play calling as well. You can look back early on in years to the Morehouse game that they had played in the inaugural HBCU Hall of Fame Classic there in Canton, Ohio. When they're winding down, you're down to this Morehouse team that you have no business in the game with anyways, but you're down and you need a good drive. And what does he dial up? They need a field goal. There's only a couple seconds left. Instead, he dials up a big touchdown over there to Brian Juice Jenkins in the corner, wide open, a walk-off touchdown, just special. When you look at games like that, you have to go and say, okay, this man may have what it takes, especially on the next level. But I definitely see him within a few years, if not next year, definitely being somebody's head coach, whether it's on the Division II or Division I level, especially in this FCS program. I think there's a couple teams in the SWAC. If a position opens up again, I think they're definitely going to look at him again. I think the positions that the schools that he had meetings with just were looking for a bigger person per se. But when it looks towards the play calling and the leadership ability, I think that next time he's definitely going to get a look. He's definitely going to get that call, and he's definitely going to end up being a head coach somewhere at another program.
Man, I agree. I mean, everybody. I mean, they were even interviewing him on NFL Network during the game, talking about how. Because I mean, listen, I know Akil had a lot of familiarity, but even with Cole Kelly and the rest of those quarterbacks that everyone was working with down there, I mean, put on an absolute show. And even I
For
forgot who the
sure.
other quarterback was on the team. I believe it was Peters from Illinois was the other quarterback on that roster. I don't remember
Think.
exactly, but I mean, everyone on that team played good, man. And you know, I need your way too early SWAC championship predictions, man, from each division.
Oh
No one can
man.
hold you to it. No one
Yikes.
can hold you to it. But just your
Yikes.
base feeling. Listen,
Oh boy.
I'm riding with FAMU this year, and I picked against them on my
Ooh.
last show. I had Jackson
You're riding with
State.
them this year.
I am. I got Jackson State, and
I
right
don't
now in the
know.
other division, I have Grambling. And then
I
I
think
said that it's
there's
going to be Jackson State, South Carolina State in the Celebration Bowl again, man. So just give me
you
your
think South
your
Carolina
feeling
State is
right
gonna
now.
repeat? You think South Carolina
Yeah,
State's gonna repeat? Okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna agree with you on that one for sure. I see South Carolina and Coach Pugh definitely coming back to Atlanta. But whew, you put me on a spot here with this prediction. Goodness gracious. Listen, man. Listen, don't hit me in the comments. I know I'm gonna get added a lot on this one, but it's gonna be hard not to roll with the home team. I'm still here, you know what I mean? I still need my tickets. You put me here on the spot here, but no, I truly believe that coming out on the opposite division, most like I want to say Grambling. I think Grambling has a really strong recruiting class. Um, I'm just not big on Coach Jackson, believe it or not. But
Oh,
I think that they actually will may as well come out. I think it'll be between them and Southern for sure. I love the new hiring for their head coach for sure. He did an amazing job at his previous school over at Prairie View, I believe. It was Prairie View,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Exactly. He did a great job there at Prairie View. And the turnaround he did at that program as well. Now, I will say on this opposite end here for the Bulldogs, it's going to be extremely tough. And I've talked to Coach Maynard multiple times, whether it's been on air, whether it's been off air, and surrounding sources as well. I think it's going to be really difficult going through that gauntlet between those three teams, between Jackson State, A&M, and FAMU as well. No disrespect to the other schools, and especially not over there that head coach Robinson at Alabama State, but it's just too much to overcome in too short a time right now with those three programs being so far ahead as a powerhouses respectfully in this side of the conference. So I'm gonna. Goodness gracious, let me see. I want to say the home team. I really do want to roll with the home team, but the question marks at quarterback really leave me choosing otherwise. To be honest with you, I think it's going to be up to see how they command the offense coming out of the spring ball and then going into the fall for me to say my early predictions here. But I'm definitely going to roll with most likely the home team. I
Hey,
think
that's fine.
I'm gonna roll with the home
I
team
like
here
it.
because I can't. Come on, man. Tomorrow's fried chicken Friday. I mean, not fried chicken Friday. Excuse me, fried fish Friday. I've been gone for so long. I literally have just got back from Kansas City today, calling the NAIA men's basketball tournament. But I'm definitely going to say the home team. If not the home team, Jackson State. Unfortunately, I know we'll get some pushback there, but especially from over there at the Offset family, but the Off Script family. Sorry there, but I definitely want to say A&M and Jackson because the question marks on defense are actually being filled, and you can see it in the recruiting that they've done so far. It's been phenomenal. So I'm looking more towards that versus FAMU. They had a lot of vet leave, a lot of leadership leave on that defensive side of the ball, where it's been with Bell on the defensive backs as well as their defensive end now going pro. So I just got too many questions defensively for the Rattlers or the Rattlers, however they like to put it. And I totally believe that it's going to be between the two teams, of course, Jackson State and A&M.
Man, listen, the comments ain't bad. Listen, trust me. You're talking to
No,
somebody
I'm
who
all for
picked.
it.
Hey, you're talking to somebody who picked Alabama A&M over Jackson State last year and had to do a
Oh,
show
yeah.
after that game. So,
Yeah,
trust me.
that's
Like,
difficult.
listen, you've never had to get on here and be like, yeah, about that. And we know how our guy Scotty handled it with the clown paint and all that stuff. But
Man,
man,
yeah, Scotty has it coming to him almost every show. Every show. It
uh,
don't matter who platform he's on, he's gonna have it coming to you. You just gotta be prepared for it.
Hey man, it is all good, man. But listen, it's going to come down to those three teams. I agree, but for me, picking Jackson State right now is because, like you said, the QB the QB battles. I'm not willing to pick a team who I don't know the starting quarterback is going to be in. With FAM,
Mhm.
you know, they got Rashawn McKay battling Musa, who's going to be a really talented guy. And I've heard
Yeah,
some rumors down there that he's balling out. So I don't know what that's going to look like in a course with Quincy Casey, Williams, and then your mystery guy that you dropped on us tonight. Now I really don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback for A&M. So I'm kind of holding off on that, but for me, I'm going to wait out to see those QB battles. But for me, I feel like Halloween is leaps and bounds ahead of any quarterback in Grambling right now. I know no disrespect to Noah Bowden,
mhm,
but for me, Halloween is that guy. And then with all the talent they added, Southern, don't know who their quarterback is going to be. And Alcorn, they have a great guy that came in from Louisiana Tech, but I just is he going to win the battle? Is he going to live up to the hype? I don't know. And so
that's
I'm
right.
picking Halloween and I'm riding with Shador because for me, he's the most consistent quarterback in the SWAC right this second. But man, listen, thank you so much for coming on the show. This will not be
Thank
the
you.
last time we have you on, man. This was an
Oh no,
amazing
definitely.
show. So plug your social media, man. Let them know what you're up to, what you got coming down the line, and where they can find you, man.
Definitely. First of all, man, I appreciate you for having me on, man. This has been very special and it's been huge for me. I was celebrating on Monday. I know originally we wanted to do this earlier in the week, but man, I was still out of town in Kansas City trying to call games for the NAIA men's basketball tournament there for the Tornadoes at Talladega College. But you guys can definitely follow me on Instagram at the handle under here on my name here, Chauncy D. Sanders. Of course, my first and last name, Chauncy Sanders on Twitter. Not too hard to find. Definitely could like and subscribe on to the Alabama A&M Athletics YouTube channel. That's where you can find me at calling games. But yeah, this has been an amazing podcast, man. I'm thankful that you had me on and we were able to work this out. And I'm definitely looking more forward towards the season more than ever right now and looking forward to hearing you guys, man. Like I said, I've been a huge fan of you and Scotty in these early career, man. I've looked at you guys and I've been mirroring the image you guys had and the amount of coverage you guys put and a lot of work you guys put into this, as well as the work you put in getting the info and the intel onto these universities and not truly being on foot on these universities on a day-to-day basis, So it's been huge. And I just want you guys to just keep up the great work, man. You guys are doing amazing. You guys are amazing leaders. And even if guys, you guys don't think that someone is seeing you guys, we're definitely seeing you guys, and we're definitely trying to follow you guys' footsteps for sure, man. And you guys motivate me on a day-to-day basis. The amount of content you guys put out on a day-to-day basis, I'm like, man, I got to catch up between him and Scotty, man. It's like it's hard, you know what I mean? It's a day-to-day grind, and you guys are definitely doing it, man.
Hey, man, listen, I appreciate it, man. I remember when this thing was like 10 listeners back in the podcast days, man. So
Hmm.
to see what it's grown
Yeah.
into, man. So shout out to all the listeners out there, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. And a lot of people want to know, man, when's that Alabama A&M podcast coming? I've seen multiple comments
Ooh,
asking when you're
will you be
dropping one.
putting a podcast together for the Bulldogs? You're right. I can say never. I will have one more semester in the fall, thankfully. So I'll be here for the football season. So if you guys want to pull up, you guys need some tickets. I definitely got you. Say no more. Between you and Scotty, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm gonna put it out right now. I am gonna have a podcast. I was trying to keep it under wraps, but I think one of the last projects I want to have at this university, one of my legacy projects will be starting up a student-led senior podcast coming up next fall for sure. I'm not sure if we want to keep it fully sports oriented or just change the exact topic of what they want to do going forward, but we've been looking forward to having a senior podcast where guys on their way out are talking about the legacy and the whatnots of that nature. I think I will be done calling games, but never say never for the Bulldogs. But I'll definitely be looking forward to it with the podcast. So you
Hey,
guys
man,
got me motivated. So I'll definitely try
it,
it for it.
hey, any questions, man, hit me up and let me know when it
Oh yeah,
drops and we're promoting it because that we need more team oriented podcasts, man. We definitely
oh yeah,
need more
definitely.
coverage for all these teams. But man, thank you so much for coming on, man. We're getting you on again very, very soon. So guys, make sure to go follow Chauncey at all his social media accounts. Keep up with his amazing work over there at Alabama A&M. But guys, Blue Bloods will be back next week with Texas Southern spring preview. Man, we got
Ooh,
Locked On HBCU podcast coming on to preview his alma mater in Texas Southern. And tomorrow, our interview with Jerry Garner drops, Mississippi Valley State defensive end, man. So make sure to check that out. Dropping tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central Time. But for Chauncey, myself, and the Blue Bloods guys, we are out for right now.